He wore a crown, but it felt heavier each day. Not with gold, but with regret. He was once king, ruler of a vast land, commander of armies, voice of God on earth. But now, he lived alone, in a small, cold room. Iron bars at the windows, doors that didn't open, a bed that creaked, a ceiling that leaked, and silence, endless silence. People called it a monastery, but he knew better. It was a cage. Once they had cheered for him. When he rode through the capital, banners flew, and children tossed petals in his path. He had fire in his eyes, ambition in his heart. He wanted to be remembered, great like Caesar, wise like Solomon. But every choice he made led to something worse. He trusted the wrong men. He fought wars he couldn't win. He broke oaths he couldn't keep. And slowly, the cheers turned into whispers. Then silence. Then hatred. Enemies came, Swedes, Russians, rebels within. They tore his kingdom apart. Villages burned, cities starved. People began to wonder if God had abandoned them, or if the king had brought it all on himself. He tried to run. He tried to fight. He tried to pray. Nothing worked. And so one day he simply left. He took off the crown, handed it over, and walked away from the throne. They say he smiled when he did it, but no one knows if it was relief or madness. Now, in the quiet stone halls of a far-off monastery, the once king sat. His royal robes were gone. He wore simple cloth. No guards. No court. Just silence and candlelight. But sometimes, when no one was looking, he would trace shapes in the air with his fingers, as if signing royal orders only he could see. He would speak to people who weren't there. He would bow to empty chairs. He would whisper apologies. To ghosts. To his people. To himself. This was no punishment from his enemies. This was punishment from history. A king who lost everything except his memories. And those too became a prison. He once ruled a city of marble. Now his world was 10 steps by 10. The king, who once walked through golden halls and watched fountains sing his name, now woke up to the sound of dripping water. No servants, no guards, just silence and stone. Each morning he rose before the sun, not from duty, but from habit. He still believed somewhere deep inside that someone would come, that the door would open, that his name still meant something outside those walls. But days became weeks. Weeks became years, and no footsteps ever echoed down the stairs. The room had no bed, just a slab. No books, just a wall he scratched names into. Names of people he remembered. Friends, enemies, lovers. Some scratched deep, some only faint lines, as if his memory too was fading. There was one name he circled every day. Asson. His son. Or maybe just a boy he once promised to protect. He whispered to him sometimes, as if the boy was sitting right there, listening. "I'm still here," he would say. "I'm still king." But there was no answer. Only the breeze through the iron bars. Sometimes he stood facing the door for hours. He imagined voices on the other side. Ministers debating. Enemies regretting. Crowds waiting for his words. He would even bow slightly, practicing what he'd say. But no one came. One day, he found a bird inside. A small, brown thing with a broken wing. He fed it crumbs from his meals, whispered stories to it. Named it General. It gave him purpose. For a while. But one morning, the bird was gone. No sound. No feathers. Just absence. And that day, the king didn't speak at all. He didn't eat. He didn't move. He just sat near the wall, silent, frozen, like a statue built to mourn itself. Some say he began to see things. A throne in the shadows, applause in the dust, a queen in the corner humming old war songs. Others say he started laughing at nothing. But the truth is simpler. He was waiting, not for freedom, not for food, but for meaning, for the cage to make sense. And when it didn't, he wrote a final word on the wall. One word. And then he slept. For a long, long time, the cage was silent. But inside the king there was a storm. He had once ruled with a voice that could shake an army. Now he whispered to shadows. The guards outside rarely spoke to him. But one day a new one arrived, young, curious. He looked at the king not as a prisoner, but as a person. "Were you really a king?" the boy asked. The king didn't smile. He simply nodded. "What happened?" The king looked down. "I stopped listening." To the boy it sounded strange. How could that bring a man from a throne to a cage? But inside that simple answer was a lifetime. He had ignored the cries of farmers when the land dried up. He had laughed at his advisors when they warned of war. He had demanded golden walls, even when his people had none to eat. He thought the crown protected him from truth. But truth, like water, always finds a way. He once thought power came from fear. But here, in chains, he learned something else. Power fades, but memory does not. People don't forget how you made them feel. They carry it. And one day they use it. He told the boy stories of parades with golden banners, of meals so large they fed 50, of a queen who once sang to him when he could not sleep. "She left me before the people did," he said. "She saw what I became, and she was right." The boy listened every day. He brought food, not just bread, but stories from the outside. How people still remembered the king, but as a warning, not a hero. The boy didn't pity him, but he saw the man behind the crown. Flawed, broken, but still breathing. The king never asked for freedom. But one morning, he awoke to find his door unlocked. He stepped out slowly. No one stopped him. Outside, the world had changed. Trees had grown where his statues once stood. His name had been removed from walls and coins. No throne waited for him. No horses. No songs. Just wind. And the bird. It flew above him, its wing fully healed. He smiled for the first time in years. He didn't run. He didn't cry. He simply sat on a broken wall and looked out at the horizon. He had lost everything, his power, his palace, his name. But for the first time he felt like a man again. Not a king. A man. And that was enough. The king stepped out. Not quickly, not like a man escaping, but slowly, like someone remembering how to walk under the sky. His feet touched the stone corridor he hadn't seen in years. He didn't tremble. He didn't speak. The guards stood back. Some nodded. Others just watched. No one tried to stop him. The bird fluttered ahead, pausing at each corner, waiting, as if it knew the way out better than him. He passed old murals, paintings of gods, battles, his own young face once painted in gold, now cracked, faded. But he didn't look away. Each step was quiet, each breath filled with something he'd forgotten, air without bars. He reached the palace garden. Overgrown, wild, but alive. He sat beside a dry fountain. No crown, no throne, just an old man who had once been everything. The young guard followed, standing a few paces behind. He didn't ask for commands. He only asked one thing. "Why didn't you ever leave?" The cage wasn't locked. The king looked up, smiled a little. "Because the bars were never made of iron," he said. "They were made of fear and memory." The bird flew up into the morning sky, and the king finally closed his eyes, not to sleep, but to rest free. For the first time in a very, very long time,